Reverend Sharpton, thanks for joining us. They tell me I've got 15 minutes with you, let's get to it. I know you're a very busy man. My first question is this. Back in 1963, it was kind of clear the sense of urgency why Dr. King brought some 100,000 people here to the nation's capital. Back us up and explain to us the sense of urgency and why you initially called for an estimated 100,000 people to come here in Washington. Why are you asking people to come here?
We're asking people to come because it's a sense of urgency now. When you look at the fact that this summer, we've seen the police killing of George Floyd, of the killing of Breonna Taylor, the killing of Rashad Brooks, just one right after another, in the middle of the pandemic, it brings to a real sense of need to respond with national legislation to deal with this. We also see a concerted effort to undermine our right to vote. So we called this march to call on the United States Congress and Senate to pass the George Floyd Justice Bill, Police and Justice Bill, that has already passed the House of Representatives and has not been brought to the Senate because Mitch McConnell has not brought it there, and to pass the John Lewis Voter Rights Bill. We have the same sense of urgency. You must remember in '63, before I was 9 years old, I was too young to come, but in '63, Dr. King came after there was the killing in June of Medgar Evers. There was the Birmingham movement. We are in the middle of the George Floyd movement. Our effort is to address the national government on the need of legislation to deal with why there's demonstrations all over the country and why there's outrage. The family of George Floyd, the family of Breonna Taylor, the family of Rashad Brooks, the family of Ahmaud Arbery, all the way back to the family of Eric Garner, Trayvon Martin, all of them will be part of the leadership of this gathering.
And I don't think we have to go through the history of how effective these marches on Washington have been. I mean, we can go back to 1941 when A. Philip Randolph was threatening to bring a march here. And then after Brown versus Board of Education, 3 years later, there was a march, to protest the lack of progress there. So I get your point. Let me ask you this, and you threw the word out first. We are in the middle of a pandemic. Lots of people who might have been coming during a different time have decided not to come. Your reaction to that?
And we have said that if you're in a hotspot state, to have a march there. We have a march that National Action Network is doing in South Carolina, at Columbia, in front of the offices of Lindsey Graham. One in Texas, in Houston, in front of the offices of Senator Ted Cruz. In Florida, in front of Rubio's office. So we will have satellite marches and rallies that they will have the jumbotrons of what we do at Lincoln Memorial. So we don't expect 100,000 people, but we expect a gathering that will send an effective message as we do this around the country. But the Congress has not been in any way focused on in terms of real legislation that's pending there, and that's what the effort will be. And I've said very candidly, no matter what the numbers, if it's the families, Martin Luther King III and I, the message will be out that this Congress cannot stall at this point in history to deal with these issues.
African-American community in this country at times is a really small community. You and I know a lot of the same people, and I've been talking to some people who are fairly close to you. There have been discussions along the way of possibly doing an all-virtual event, correct? You were opposed to that?
Not at all. I think there will be a virtual as well as a physical, and the virtual is going to cover what we do physically and then have other programming. There's going to be cable television that's going to cover it live. We're not opposed to any effort. The fact is that when we called this march at George Floyd's funeral, a lot of us did not expect the pandemic would last this long. Once we have seen that that is the case, we began organizing on different ways to get the message out. So the point is not the different ways the message will be carried out. The point is that the message is focused at legislation from the Congress. We expect that a lot of people will come. They will be COVID-19 protocol in. We're going to take people's temperature as they enter. We're going to make sure everyone has a face mask. If they don't, we're going to give them one free. We're going to give them gloves and sanitizer. So we're going to be responsible, unlike the president's gatherings. But at the same time, we're not going to be just locked into Lincoln Memorial. We're going to use the fact that it will be televised and virtual and in different cities. The message will get out. Let's not get caught up on the method and forget the message.
Got it. A lot of African-American families like mine, and we're from Louisville, Kentucky, are divided on this. In the beginning, a lot of my people were going to come. They were going to rent a van. We discussed this, and most, if not all of us, have decided not to participate because of the risk. The disproportionate number of African-Americans who contract the COVID-19, the disproportionate number of African-Americans who actually die. Talk to me about your concern. And a lot of those people, despite the risk, are going to be coming. You're going to be doing what you can to protect them, but are you confident that you can adequately protect the people that are coming?
We're confident because we checked with the health experts. Yeah, there's been marches all over the country, including Washington, over the last 3 months. In Louisville, they've never stopped marching, as you know. In Portland, they've never stopped marching every day. In other cities, and there's not been an uptick in COVID-19 in any of those areas because they're outdoors and people are taking precautions, and we're confident that this will also be the case on August 28th.
Have you been in lockstep with Mayor Muriel Bowser? Is she going to be part of the program?
We've not asked her to be part of the program. She's certainly welcome, but our bureau in Washington has worked hand in hand with her office to find out the local protocol in D.C., which is why we know the hot spots that she's outlined. They'll have the final list on the 24th on Monday, and we will abide by that. We're not, and this march is on the mall, not in the city, but we are absolutely going to be respectful of the mayor. But we're not asking politicians necessarily to speak. This is a civil rights march. In '63, since you brought it up, politicians didn't address that march. Adam Clayton Powell, who was the leading black member of Congress, was there and did not speak. This is not about partisan politics. This is about civil rights and voting rights issues.
What about Black Lives Matter? They're here, been here for quite some time, have been quite effective, not just here in Washington, but throughout the country, throughout the world. Are they participating, or is this a separate event?
They've been invited, and they have a virtual conference later that day, which they've said they're going to start after the march. So there's always been different approaches. You had SNCC that at the time of Dr. King that was different than Dr. King's move. You have had those that did different things then. Malcolm X was opposed to the march. There's always been different strands. We're not fighting against each other. We are finding ways to cooperate because all of us want to see something done about the threat to voting rights and about police brutality. And we are wise enough and strategic enough not to fight each other when all of us have the common enemy of a country now that has in many ways, undermined the Voting Rights Act and is allowing police to go unaccounted.
You're an incredible, gifted speaker. People are still reciting, lines from your George Floyd eulogy. Have you been working on your speech, and what are you going to say to the people who do come and the people who are watching virtually from all over the country?
Well,
all over the world? What are you going to give these people?
I don't write speeches. I'm an extemporaneous speaker, including the eulogy that you referred to. But the message is going to be that we need legislation. I grew up in the northern part of the King movement. When I was a kid, I started the year he was killed. And we were taught, growing up by the mentors that were 15 years or so older than me, that you have demonstration to lead to legislation and then seek reconciliation. A lot of people want to go to reconciliation without legislation. We cannot enter the next phase of wherever the elections bring us without having permanent legislation there. Otherwise, they will say this was a summer of discontent after George Floyd and not a summer of change. We must change the laws, and the laws have to be changed in the federal government. I'll give you an example. In New York, we were able now, just a month ago, in the middle of this movement, to get the governor of New York to make chokeholds illegal, to make policemen by law have to be transparent if they've had a record of complaints about abuse. That's in New York State. Never had that before. We were able to get that in the last month. But if you go through the tunnel from New York to New Jersey, that does not apply. So you need national legislation, federal legislation, which is the point of August 28th.
Okay, allow me a couple of questions before I let you go concerning the upcoming election. Are you concerned about the turnout, specifically the African American turnout? A lot of people make the case today that if African Americans had turned out in the urban areas in these swing states, Donald Trump would not be president today. Do you adhere to that, and are you concerned about the African American turnout this time?
I am convinced that if turnout is not aborted or if it is not uncounted, that Donald Trump is going to be defeated. I think that if you look at the numbers, it was 11,000 votes that separated Hillary Clinton from victory in Michigan in 2016. I think that we've got to make sure that we go to the base of the African American community with the right message and assure that there will not be interference in how the votes are counted and that people can vote. And we must be able to inspire people to, whether it's mail-in or in person, that they have to do what they have to do. If people can be killed, give us the right to vote. People be beaten on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, as we saw what happened with John Lewis and Reverend Hosea Williams. We certainly can stand on line if we're in states that the pandemic does not affect, and hopefully it will not by November. We can certainly stand in line, or we certainly can go through the mail-in process. And we're going to do a lot of educating on the mail-in process, both at the march, August 28th, and virtually, and going forward. But if you don't pinpoint what we need and be able to galvanize people around their interests, it is not about voting for Biden and Harris. It's about voting for our community to be able to have fairness and justice. And we should pay the price, which is a very small price compared to the price paid to give us the right to vote in the first place.
You didn't even mention the possibility of African Americans voting for Donald Trump. He says he's been the greatest president for the African American community.
Donald Trump has done more to set a tone against the interests of the African American community, from commending people, saying there were good people on both sides when people openly marched in Charlottesville as supporting a Confederate statue. I mean, to say that you want to protect a statue of Robert E. Lee, who the only reason he's in history is that he led an insurrection, a seditious insurrection, to keep us enslaved. And the president of the United States says they're fine people on both sides. They killed a young woman during that demonstration. Donald Trump has his Justice Department immediately suspended all consent decrees against police departments that had happened under the Obama administration that had consent decrees based on a pattern of police abuse. They unilaterally stopped all of that. They withdrew any voter lawsuits from the Justice Department that was questioning the unfairness of voter ID laws and other impediments. So if you look at the record, it is ludicrous for him to say he's done more for the Black community. Black unemployment was going down under President Obama because he saved the economy. Donald Trump rode the wave. He was not the one that instigated or incited or started the movement of the ocean that caused the wave of low Black unemployment. And even now, Black unemployment is still disproportionate to white unemployment.
I promise this is my exit question, okay? Kanye West, what do you think of his candidacy? Does he siphon off some of the African American vote?
I think Kanye West is a gifted artist. I like his music and his politics. I certainly disagree. He has been one that has said that Donald Trump was all right with him. He even wore a MAGA hat. And I don't think a lot of people are going to be swayed or deterred by some side campaign with someone who proclaims he likes the incumbent. When I was a young civil rights activist in my teens, I liked the Four Tops and the Temptations, but I wouldn't have voted for them to be president.
What about James Brown? You had a history with James Brown. You loved James Brown.
James Brown was like a father to me, and I supported him being the godfather of soul. I never suggested he should run for president.
Right. Thank you very much for your time, man. I really appreciate it,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Al Sharpton.
Be safe.
Reverend Al Sharpton.